All right, today we're going to be talking about 2.4, which is multiplying and dividing rational numbers. So please make sure at this time you have your math composition notebook open, you have a writing utensil, and you are writing everything that I write in your math notebook. All right, let's get started. So to begin, our learning target for today is going to be I will be able to multiply and divide rational numbers. So the last videos you watched, you talked about multiplying and dividing integers. So now we're doing the same things with the same rules. We're just talking about rational numbers. So we're going to work with it using decimals and fractions. So let's go down and look at the rule. Multiplying and dividing fractions. To multiply or divide rational numbers, use the same rules for signs as you used for integers. All right. And just a reminder what those rules were. If you had different signs, okay, you were dividing or multiplying numbers that had different signs, the answer was always going to be negative. Okay. If you had the same signs, okay, so if both of them were negative or both of the numbers were positive, your answer is always going to be positive. Okay, so you can kind of see here, it talks about that. It shows that a negative times a positive is always going to be a negative, and it shows two negatives is always going to be a positive, or two positives are always going to be a negative. Okay, so since we're working with fractions, I just want to remind you guys of a couple things. So first is the reciprocal. So if you look over here to the right, I just want you all to remember that the reciprocal of a fraction is essentially the numerator and denominator flip. Okay, so they flip. So just note that because when we divide fractions, we're going to need to talk about the reciprocal. So we're going to go over a couple rules first, just to remember from 6th grade, since I know it's been a while since we have worked with fractions. But to divide fractions, well, first let's do to multiply fractions. So to multiply fractions, write this down as a reminder, please. To multiply fractions, you multiply the numerators together and then the denominators together. So you multiply the numerators and denominators together. So if you look up here, you can kind of see that. What I like to call it in my class is the butterfly technique. So if you look up here on the numbers, you do butterfly around the numerators, butterfly wing around the denominators, and then it's negative 2 times 1, 7 times 3. So you see, so that's how we multiply fractions. To divide fractions, let's write that. To divide fractions, you are going to multiply, take the first number and multiply it by the reciprocal. Multiply by the reciprocal. Okay, so hence why we are remembering what the reciprocal is, and it's up here, just so you know what it is. I also like to use another terminology to kind of think about dividing fractions, and that is keep, change, flip. Keep, change, flip. Okay, and what that means is you keep the first fraction, you change the division sign to multiplication, and then you flip the other fraction. That's essentially just an easy, catchy way of saying multiply by the reciprocal. So keep, change, flip for dividing fractions. All right, let's go down. So example 1, dividing rational numbers. Find negative 5 1/5 divided by 2 1/3. Right now, I could decide whether my answer is going to be negative or positive. How could I do that? Well, I want to take a look at both of these numbers and look at their signs. I see here that one has a negative sign and the other one doesn't. That means that they have different signs. And if I remember back to my rule from 1.4 and 1.5, if two numbers have different signs, the answer is always going to be negative. So I know right here now that my answer is going to be negative. So let's get started. First thing I need to do with this, these are mixed numbers. And remember, whenever we have mixed numbers, the first thing we need to do is turn them into improper fractions. So I'm going to keep the negative. And remember, to turn it into an improper fraction, you multiply the whole number by the denominator, you add that with the numerator, and you put it all over the denominator. So that's what negative 5 1/5 will be. And then we're dividing it by, turn this one 2 1/3 into an improper fraction. So we do 2 times 3 plus 1 over 3. This is going to equal negative 5 times 5 is 25 plus 1 is 26. Negative 26 over 5 divided by 2 times 3 is 6 plus 1 is 7 divided by 7 over 3. Okay, now we have it as improper fractions. So now we can kind of work with it. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do our dividing fractions rule. Keep, change, flip. Keep the first fraction, change the division sign to multiplication, and flip the second fraction. So I'm going to keep 26 over 5, change the division sign to multiplication, and flip the other fraction. So it's going to be 3 over 7. From there, I know my multiplying fraction rules. I can look up above. Multiplying fractions, you want to divide the numerator by the numerator and the denominator by the denominator. So I'm going to actually write this out. And remember, on your show your worksheet for big ideas, you need to write this out. Show me all your work. So it's going to be negative 26 times 3 over 5 times 7. Okay? From here, this is fine if you use a calculator because you're still showing me all your work. So you would want to do 26 times 3, which would give you 78. And don't forget the negative, over 5 times 7, which I know is 35. From there, we can turn it into a mixed number, which would be negative 2 with a remainder of 8 over 35. So these are your two answers that you could get for example 1. All right, and next up, we are going to do example 2, multiplying rational numbers. So we're going to talk about decimals now. So find negative 2.5 times 3.6. Okay, so I'm going to line them up like we know how to multiply decimals from when we did this in 6th grade. Negative 2.5 times 3.6. Line the decimal up, please. Okay, right here, before we even start, let's identify whether my answer is going to be negative or positive. Well, are they different or the same signs? Well, I see one's negative, one's positive. That means they are different signs, which means that my answer is going to be negative. All right, so right there, I know my answer is going to be negative. Okay, let's get started. 5 times 6 is 30. So I put the 0 there, and then I carry the 3 over. 2 times 6 is 12, plus the 3 is going to give me 15. Then remember, we put a 0 here. Then we do 3 times 5. That's going to give me 15, and I carry the 1 over. And then 3 times 2 is 6, plus 1 is going to give me that 7. All right. So now add them up. So we're going to do 0. 5 plus 5 is 10. Carry the 1. And 1 plus 7 is 8. Plus the extra 1 is going to give me 9. And then just a reminder, you have to count where the decimal is. So this is 1 place value over. This is 1 place value over. You add those up, a reminder from 6th grade. And then you go over 2. And you put the decimal there. So your answer should be 9. But wait, what sign is it? Well, look up here. We already decided that it's negative. So this is going to be negative 9.00. So equals negative 9. And that's just negative 9. So that is your answer. Real quick, just a reminder, if you are given 3 numbers, okay, so let's say you are given, let's take a peek, negative 5 over 3 times 2.5 times 3 over 5. The first thing you're going to do if you're given 3 numbers is you're going to just work with the first 2 first, okay? So you are just going to worry about the first 2. Then once you get the answer to that, you are going to take what the answer is. Okay, so I'm going to write here, you're going to take what the answer is, and then you're going to do that last part and multiply it by that last part. So essentially, if you're given three numbers, it's going to be the same thing like what I showed above, except you're just going to do it in pieces like we've been doing in the past. All right, that is 2.4. Make sure you have all these notes down. Your ed puzzle is completed before class so that when you come to class, you can get started on the big ideas assignments. Nice job.